What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Sporting Cast Podcast. I'm your host, Lucas Red. I hope you guys all had a wonderful 4th of July weekend celebrating America turning 250 years old. But with the July 4th gone, that means the NFL season is right around the corner. Players report to training camp at the end of July, so why not bring back another familiar friend with the Houston Texans? Not Mark Vandermeer, but this time Johnny Harris. John's been the sideline reporter for the Houston Texans since 2014. He's originally from Houston, played football at Brown University. So we'll talk a little bit about his journey and the impact of what the sport has made on him. He had a little pit stop in Florida going into coaching before he's doing this gig now. So we'll hear from John about the Texans, the AFC South, a couple NFL predictions in general. John's also the NFL guru for the draft, so we will hear from him on 2027, maybe predictions, what to look out for in college football this year, and a whole lot of ball talk. So sit back, relax, and we'll have John on shortly. And welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Sporting Cast Podcast. Johnny Harris here is joining us, sideline reporter for the Houston Texans. Johnny, first off, thank you very much for joining. How's your summer been? We are a couple weeks away from training camp, so appreciate it, and hopefully the World Cup's been keeping you entertained down in Houston, Texas.
Oh, yes, it definitely has. In fact, the changeover is happening now. We went from NRG Stadium during the season to Reliant Stadium, back to Reliant Stadium. And then during World Cup, we went to Houston Stadium. And now we're getting back to Reliant Stadium, and that's what we're going to be going towards. So it's been, I saw one of the FIFA PR people. They were in the office next to our studio. And I saw her, and she was like, well, what do you think? What's been your impression of FIBA, the World Cup? And I'm like, captivating. Like, it's been unbelievable. Whether it's the U.S. team, I know they play well against Belgium, but U.S. team, had all of us excited about what they were doing. But these games have been incredible. And I think, Lucas, one of the things about the World Cup is I was liking big events, Super Bowl, Final Four, World Series, whatever. I want the stars to play like stars. And the World Cup has been stars playing like stars. Mbappe and Messi, Erling Haaland, who I'm Man City fan, so I love Haaland, and just watching what he's done from Norway has been incredible. So the stars have really shown up, and that was kind of the frustrating part of the other night against Belgium. The players that are perceived as the U.S. stars really didn't kind of take over the game or do anything to really impact the game. And I think that was sort of frustrating to watch. But, man, these 8 teams that are left, the stars have really stepped up and made this World Cup really fun. Look, it's not American football, I get it. But about probably 9-10 years ago, I kind of fell in love with Pep Guardiola and Manchester City and Premier League and really just started kind of learning soccer at that point. Always kind of just, it's soccer, whatever. My dad, growing up, used to call it a communist conspiracy. And so I think I probably believed that a little bit too much. And I used to give when I was coaching, one of my best players, he used to play, he was a great soccer. He's one of the best players to come out of Jacksonville, Florida. And he played at Furman with Clint Dempsey. He was the captain on a team when Clint played there. And I used to give him grief all the time about soccer. And then I went and I watched them play, and I really gained appreciation for what soccer is all about. But it really was like the last 8 to 10 years where I kind of picked up Man City as my club team and really started watching soccer with a little bit more discerning eye, if you will, and just really kind of fell in love with it. And then we went to London in 2019 to play the Jaguars. And the day before, we got invited to go see Fulham, which is Shad Khan's team, who owns the Jaguars. And Shad invited a group of us, and we went and we sat in the suite basically that had for us. And went and saw Fulham versus Hull City, which they were in the championship. They were in the Premier League at that point. They were in the championship to level down, and we loved it. I mean, just absolutely loved it. So, yeah, this World Cup has definitely kept all of us, including me, entertained before we kick it off with the pigskin late in July.
What's funny is my experience with soccer as a bandwagon fan is rooting for Tottenham over in Europe for my coworker that I used to work with. But now a couple weeks ago on this podcast, I made a prediction that Argentina would repeat. Messi doesn't have any pressure. Now versus Egypt, they had me a little scared, but for the little soccer knowledge that I know, they're making me look smart so far. So we'll see how long that carries on. I think tomorrow or whenever they play next. So it's good. But no, John, appreciate you joining. I hope the summer's been great for you so far. We're right around the corner. But for our listeners, for Mark Vandermeer, the voice of the Texans, you work very close with him. But who is John Harris? You've been with the Texans since 2014, but you've had a journey.
Yeah, I definitely have. I was born in Wisconsin, so I grew up a towhead in Wisconsin, a big, and when you live in Wisconsin, everybody's a Brewers, Packers, Bucks fan, Wisconsin Badgers. And so when I was younger, I would live in that. My dad was a high school football coach and a history teacher, and he literally wanted to go coach where high school football was more important. And he had a former player who was coaching in a place called Alice, Texas, which is kind of probably southwest of Houston. And we went and visited. And ironically, we went and visited while we were there. We watched the University of Houston. In 1983, we lose to NC State in the Final Four. I remember that distinctly. But we loved our time in Texas when we were visiting. And so my dad's players said, well, hey, why don't you come down and interview for jobs? There were going to be plenty of them. And that next summer, it's exactly what my dad did. So we moved down to Texas. I was a fish out of water for a while. But then through sports and everything else, really kind of caught on. Ended up playing through sports in high school, tied in academics. My academics were pretty good. And got an opportunity to go to Brown University. Went to Brown University, and that'll end up being important in a second. But went to Brown University, played 4 years there. But then when I got done, I got a civil engineering degree. And I have people kind of doing the map of like, well, wait, civil engineering, it gets better. But I got to my final year and my final semester, I'm like, I don't want to be a civil engineer. And I knew I wanted to do something in sports. And so I had people suggesting me, hey, why don't you think about teaching and coaching? They'll love you. You love, you teach math, like schools will love me. I'm like, all right, well, we'll see what happens. But I didn't have a teaching degree. And so they were like, well, you can go private school. So I went and I went down to the bookstore and I bought a book of private schools in the United States. And it's like this. It looks like New York City phone book. So I start going through there and I start thinking about places that I would like to go. And I like the Northeast. And so and there's a ton of private schools there. So I figured I'd send my resume, cover letter there. Then I started with some of the places in Florida. I don't know why. Florida I thought would be a good place to live. And then Texas, and then my girlfriend at the time was going to Seattle. And I was going to do kind of the Pac Northwest. And then Southern California. So it was kind of the chin strap, basically, of the United States I was kind of looking at. And I got to a point where I'd already sent like 120. So I stopped with the state of Florida after I got to like the G's. Like I thought, like, okay, I'm fine, whatever. And that becomes important because I ended up getting a call from a fiscal high school in Jacksonville, Florida. And in my cover letter, I put that I never taught. I was 22. I was fresh out of college, or about to be. But my parents were teachers, and my dad was a coach, and I've learned a lot from that. And so that experience will shape me as a teacher, coach, whatever. But again, I have no experience. And so, God bless her, Dale Raymond. She was the assistant headmaster in the school at the time, and she was in charge of hiring, and her name was Dale. And when I sent my stuff, thankfully I didn't send it to her because I would have put Mr. Right. Well, when I walked in and saw Dale was a woman, I thought, oh boy. But she was hugely important in my life because she hired me shortly thereafter, but she also hired my wife. And it was funny because she had told my wife no. And then my wife got ticked off and drove and showed up on campus and was like, this is what you turned down. And she brought her portfolio. My wife's an artist, brought her portfolio, the whole thing. And was like, wait, I made a mistake. So in the same kind of hiring class, hired my wife. And that's where we met at Fiscal High School in Jacksonville, Florida after Brown. I taught there for 7 years. I ended up being a varsity head coach when I was 27. My final year, we went to the playoffs. And I said, okay, that's it. I'm done. And looking back, don't know if it was the right decision. I was a natural coach, kind of a natural leader. I'd taken a football program that nobody even gave a damn about, and we were in the playoffs by my third year. But I always had thought I was going to do something different. And I got an opportunity to go to University of Virginia and get my master's in accounting. So to bridge that, I always felt like after going to Brown, I needed just something where I could make more money, et cetera. But I was at Episcopal and I was helping kids. I was coaching. I was, coaching was exhausting, but after I had the exhaustion leave me, I loved it. I loved it. But I didn't think it was right for my family at the time. And so I looked for other things, and I found this program that I can go to where Ernst & Young would pay for my master's, and I would go for 2 summers to University of Virginia, and in between those summers, I would work for Ernst & Young. And so it was kind of best of both worlds. It's like I got this job at this big accounting firm, and they're going to pay for my master's. And I got an accounting at Adler. Hated it from day number 3. Hated it. Just was like, what am I doing? Like, this is crazy. I don't know why I'm here. But because they were paying for my master's, I had to stay. I had to stay 5 years. I ended up staying 6. But in the meantime, because I hated it so much, I was like, I got to do something. And so I called my buddies back here in Houston. And I said, I've been with them doing some college football stuff. They knew I do college football. And I was like, hey, you think you guys can have me back on and just talk some college football just to kind of give me some light, just to give me something I could get excited about. And so one of the guys is somebody I grew up with, Lance Zerline, NFL.com. And the other guy, John Granati, who's his partner, was not totally sure, because Lance just knew this all the time with John. He's like, hey, I got this guy. And Granado did like, all right, whatever. So it took a little while to win Granado over, but finally he did. I was on that show for 6 years. And Granado called me. This was 2007. Called me. I was in a Harris Teeter. I'm just kind of, going through day-to-day with accounting. Really would like to do something with sports, but nothing's really materialized. And so I'm in Harris Teeter, which people from North Carolina know. It's this beautiful grocery store. It's like H-E-B, here in Texas. And so Granado called me on Olympics on Wednesday night, and I went on with Ben Thursday morning. And so when he called me, I was like, oh man, he's going to push me back, because I would usually do my hour hit on Thursdays. And I was like, okay, if you ever have to, push me off that time, let me know, because I've got to drive to my, this is before Zoom and all that. I had to drive to the location where I was doing my accounting work, go find a room, do my hour, and then go back in with the audit team. So I just wanted to know if that was the case. And within 2 minutes, he's like, are you ready to come back to Houston? And I kind of chuckled like, yeah, okay, right. He goes, no, we're starting a new radio station, and I want you to be our after wing guy, or one of them. And I about like I'm in the frozen section, and the door just kind of shut, and I'm like, did you just say what I thought you said? And so we had this conversation at Harris Teeter. I get done, I get home, and I tell my wife, and we lived probably about a mile from her parents. And I got to tell her, look, we're moving to Houston. And she's like, oh my gosh. So that was not the easiest thing, but that started me, at least in the meeting around. We were a brand new station, and did the afternoons for a few years. I did overnights for a few years. And then they kind of had some changes with management. And after doing the overnights, I did locally for a year, but they never made any money. And it was not a really good situation. I was always kind of looking for a way out. Well, they gave me the way out. They're like, we're moving on from you. Like, all right. But when they did, I didn't have a non-compete clause. And so when I was like, oh, Mark was like, hey, and this is where the timing of all this was great, because this happened in 2014, but in 2012, the Texans had this new arrangement with Sports Radio 610, and it really created Texas All Access. And Mark was kind of doing Texas All Access by himself. And so Mark kind of reached out to, Mark Gang, the voice of the Texans, kind of reached out to people that I worked with or worked for, and they're like, oh, you have to do this. And Mark's question was always, yeah, but do you think Johnny's going to fit with me and, everybody over here? And they're like, absolutely. And the reason Mark brought that up is when we were competing radio stations, the guy who was now our engineer or our producer, Robert Hensey, we got in a fight in a basketball game. And I threw a punch at Robert after he kind of shoved me, and we kind of went to the ground throwing punches, and now we're great friends. But Mark kind of had that in his mind, kind of the way that I play basketball is not like I would play football. And so I think Mark was concerned about that a little bit. And so he brought me over at that point in 2014. We did a few radio shows together, and then he goes, I want you to be a sideline reporter, and I want you to do more. And I was like, all right, I'm in. So it was at 2014 when I got on the sidelines, and I've been doing it ever since. I've been doing Texas All Access. We basically talk for an hour on Texas football, NFL football. So I think I'm the only civil engineering / master of accounting sideline reporter that is in the NFL. But it's interesting because I have met many of them, and they're very, very interesting characters and people, and they've come from all different backgrounds like myself. And I think that's what has given me, not a leg up, but it just allows me to look at things a little bit differently. But one of the reasons that Mark ended up giving me a call also was that Bill O'Brien had just gotten hired. And Bill O'Brien was a teammate of mine at Brown. He was a year and a half basically ahead of me. But and Bill's told the story many times, so I can tell it. I got Bill through Econ 111. And I don't know anything about Econ, if I'm being honest. But I got it through Econ 111. One day we're in class, and he just turned around. He stopped me and Johnny, you should help, man. I got to pass this class to graduate. It's the third time I'm taking this. Can you help me? So we had some monster long 2-room sessions throughout the rest of the semester to getting through. We got it through. And now you got to pay attention to Econ 111 because it makes way more money than I do. But that was kind of the other aspect of it for Mark, was that I knew Bill. And ironically, that helped. But then at the end, it was like Bill just kind of pushed all that aside, like it didn't even matter that we had an issue or anything. By the time we got the COVID in 2019, it was kind of a bad scene. But knowing Bill and being friends with Bill, having tutored in Econ 111, being able to kind of understand Bill was another asset that got me in the building. And then once I was there and I started doing radio work, once I started doing stuff with Mark and writing and all this kind of stuff, I remember Mark saying to me, he goes, I remember saying something about, I'm glad Bill got me that building or something. He goes, that might have helped. He goes, but what you've been able to do this month, what you bring to it, that's the most important thing. And that was good, because when Bill was asked to leave, I was a little worried how I would be perceived. But I had been there long enough that people were like, okay, we like what Johnny does. We want him here regardless. And since then, it's been, 4 head coaches and how many other GMs and a lot of craziness to get to what we are today.
Well, I'm hoping the stability with D'Amico Ryans and Nick Casero is here for the, at least 5 to 10 more years. But no, 2 questions before my important question. One, did Bill ever give you maybe one of those sign-on bonuses as a payback? You were his chat GPT before it all started.
That's right. No, he did not. It definitely would have helped at times. That's for sure. But no, he was he was very stingy with everything, and information. There were always people outside the building that would text me that were Houston media, and they're like, "Oh man, that's crazy. That's crazy about such and such," and I'd be like, "What? Oh, you didn't know?" I'm like, "No." And we'd find out, through the grapevine, somebody had been fired or somebody had been hired. We're like, "What? I'm in the building. What?" We did not have information free flowing our way, in large part because Bill, coming from the Patriots, even though he knew me, grew to know and love Lark, there was that we have a microphone in front of our face, and anything that is said or written, that can be construed as an advantage for the opponent. And so it was it took a while from when Bill was fired for, me to just write an article and say something particular about the team that wasn't, I didn't get a text or an email about, because it was, the written word, spoken word that can be used, by opponents, and they can be used in a negative direction against the Texans. And so, there were times where I learned I would put something false in a training camp, write up. I would put something fake in there, because if people were really reading it throughout the NFL, well, they were going to get a fake piece of information. Oh, okay, Johnny's talking about this guy doing really good. Well, if he gets cut, we'll go pick him up. And I was kind of testing to see whether that was actually the case or not. But I know in one case it was. When I was like, oh, okay. So I kind of had to back off of that and really just kind of scale everything down, because the amount of stuff that I see versus the amount of stuff I can say and the stuff I can write about, it was like night and day. And so that can be some of the difficulty in it, because I do work for the team.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to be very careful about some of the things, like, if a guy really stinks in the offensive lines, I don't say that. I'll say, hey, the offensive line wasn't great. So there are different, over the years you learn kind of that stuff. But, it was kind of tough with Bill, because Bill read and listened to everything. And so he would know some of the things I'd written. I remember I sent an article to our whoever our internet people were. I sent it. Half an hour later, I got a text from Bill about that particular article. And I was like, okay. He was on top of the information that was out there. He would go up at a press conference and say, yeah, I don't think that's any of that. It's like, no, he knew everything that was going on, everything. But me and Mark, there were a few times we'd be left in the dark, and probably for good reason. I mean, we're really good about, we're never going to put anything out there that could ever hurt the Texans. Those kind of things. I mean, there are times where we had to be negative about the Texans because of that beat 40 and up in that Buffalo. What positive can you say about it? That happened in 2021. But we try and limit, what we say about, well, this guy played a bad game. This guy dropped those 4 passes. This guy should be replaced. It's like, we stay away from those, those kind of things, but, the O'Brien regime was very careful in how they gave us information. And I don't blame them. I mean, people with microphones and news pads, but we're like, look, Bill, we're never going to say anything publicly about anything. And so it was kind of regaining that trust throughout. But this is why I love D'Amico and I love Nick. Like, we seemingly have their trust no matter what. Even when we hear things that we know, okay, we could never put that on Twitter. We could never put that in a radio broadcast. Things on the plane. There was I can't remember. I think it was a Titans sideline reporter told a story on the radio about something that happened on a team plane. It was like, are you a moron? Like, what are you doing? We've learned, and I guess we didn't really learn, just we already knew. There's things that are sacred in the organization, and we're not going to be able to talk about them, but we know the team better than anybody. But the amount of stuff we've shared, there's so much more that we probably know that we don't. So it's a delicate balancing act. There definitely was even more so with Bill, but with D'Amico, I feel like my PTSD is kind of shaken off a little bit throughout the years that D'Amico has been here. He's been just a godsend.
Well, good. And the second non-important question: were you winning that basketball game when you got in this fist fight?
Yeah, we did. We did actually. It was to explain a little bit further. It was the Houston Rockets 3-on-3 basketball tournament. And so they started it the first year that we opened up our new radio station. And so we had a young guy. Now he's in his 40s, one of my great friends. His name is Raheel Ramzanali. And he was one of the most talented guys I've ever met. And Ray was a really good basketball player. So I'm up there in age a little bit. We had a couple of the guys that are up there in age a little bit. Lance, Zeron, who I mentioned earlier, Minute.com. He's a couple years older than me. So we keep the game close for a little bit, and then Raheem would close it out. But whenever we played Mark's team and Robert was playing on a team, that was Fort Trader 610. So a lot of our guys came from there. So there was this natural rivalry. And we felt like they were saying some things on air about us. And we just had a lot of guys that, I don't know the right way of saying this in the most positive way, but there were a lot of guys that had switches. Definitely one of those. Eel was one of those. Lance, definitely. So you really didn't want to anger us in any way, shape, or form. And so we ran the perfect pick and roll. And when I went to go set the pick, I'm a decent little big guy. Robert's, probably a few pounds less than I am, but he's a big guy too. But I put a screen on him, and then I rolled to the basket where I put the screen on and kind of flopped a little bit. It's my story.
NBA version, of course. NBA teams.
Yes. Then I rolled to the basket, laid it in. So next time I went to go do that, he kind of shoved me. And then my switch flipped. And then we got in this big brawl. We ended up winning that game, and we won the Rockets 3-on-3 tournament the first 4 years we played it.
Okay.
And so everybody was kind of gunning for us at some point. But he would kind of carry us through, which is kind of nice. But we would then play the Rockets 3-on-3 team, which included Daryl Morris, who was the GM.
Yeah.
Who ended up being the GM with the
Sixers.
Daryl's one of the smartest guys I know. But I was the tallest guy on our team. So I got stuck covering Daryl, who's 6'4", down in the post the whole time. And I'm like, there's nothing I can do. It's jump hooks. It's, he's got like the perfect, down in the post game. I'm just like, I'm 6 foot. I'm covering 6'4". And then one year, this name will resonate for some people, but Sean Respert was a shooting guard at Michigan State, All-American, stud. And he was with the Rockets for some reason. I can't remember what role he had. And they would kick it out to him, and it was just lights out. It was like, you understood, like, okay, that's a different level of basketball player right there. He just went lights out on us. Thankfully, we won the tournament already, and that was just kind of a bonus game. But I was like, holy smokes. So, yeah, we won our share. It wasn't until year 5 when somebody knocked us out. And then I put the shoes on the court, retired at that point.
Well, hey, I'm glad the knees are still intact, and you're still living every day to its fullest. But no, before we talk football, last question. A big reason I started this podcast is the book that Mark wrote, Go Get Your Dream Job. It sounds like a big thing, especially for the listeners that we have, former athletes, current athletes, people maybe looking to make a career change. It seems like you did that in your own version, and which is funny how you and Mark are now working so close together. What is your advice to those people listening right now of go get your dream job and do something like what you're doing today?
Yeah, I talk to so many people nowadays. Doing what we're doing 15 years ago, whenever I really got into the business, there wasn't Zoom, there wasn't Microsoft Teams, there wasn't really any way. I mean, YouTube was just in its infancy. Podcasts were, I remember my brother-in-law telling me about, he had gone and he had done a, I don't know what you call it, but Apple every year, they would have their, they would have a series where they would bring out entrepreneurs and innovators, and they bring them out and they let them speak about a new product that you could get with, Apple, and Steve Jobs introduced him. And I remember he came back from there. He's like, hey, it's been called podcast. You might be good as podcast. Like, what the hell's a podcast? Nowadays, fast forward till now, you can do a podcast in the bathroom if you wanted to. You can do a Zoom anywhere. We can, you can post something on YouTube, and you can do all of this in anonymity. You can also do it and keep doing it, and you never know who might see it. And I kind of did that with the tools that we had back in the late 1990s and the early 2000s. I would go on radio with Lance and John and talk about college football. And look, there's a modicum, or if not more, of luck that's involved, because the reason that I was on with them talking with college football is because the Oilers had left Houston. and they didn't have an NFL team to talk about. So they were like, well, how do we pass the time? What do we do? And college football became a bigger thing for that. And they're like, well, hey, we got the right guy. Johnny was talking about. And I just was kind of a fan of college football, kind of, recalled things. And so it kind of built from there. But I mean, I went 8 years basically without, from that standpoint, without a paycheck. I mean, I did things free. I wanted people to hear what I had to say, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so very much, but I was from a life. Like, I know I can do this. I know I can be good at this. I got to just, keep at it and see. And then it just, some luck, Grano calling me, starting a new radio station. There's some luck that gets involved. But, Lucas, the number of 3 things that I did for years, at Sports Radio 610, doing interviews with LSU pregame radio show. Hey, will you jump on this radio station? The other door that got open was my writing. When I got into accounting, I talked about earlier, I hated it. I hated it. And so I was unassigned because nobody knew who I was. I was coming to Raleigh, North Carolina office. I didn't go to school there. I didn't know anybody there. And so I was unassigned for 2 or 3 weeks. And so people were like, well, we've got to take him because we got to fill up all these jobs. I didn't know anybody. So the first couple of weeks I'm unassigned, and I'm like trying to fill the time with, some accounting things. Well, there's only so much you can do. And so I'm in a back cubicle and I'm like, screw this. And so I started just seeking of college football, and I would start writing these little nuggets. Just start writing them like little 2-sentence nuggets about each team, kind of a quick hits article. And I remembered seeing collegefootballnews.com. And I was like, I think I can write for them. I think I can write on college football. And so I was like, I think that's something I could do while I'm trying to find something else, and maybe it leads to something else. So I sent my stuff to a guy named Pete Hutag. And first of all, I had to kind of poke around to see who I'd sent it to. Well, eventually, somebody drunk up to one who said, hey, contact Pete Hutag. Okay. So I sent Pete a resume, sent him some of the stuff I did. Didn't hear anything. A couple months later, same thing. Long story short, I sent probably 18 months of sending stuff to Pete with no response. And so finally in 2003, I've been back doing some of the radio in Houston, but I kind of had that I could put back on my resume. And I was doing a newsletter with Lance, my friend Lance Erline from NFL.com. It was called View from a Sideline View. And Lance handled the pro stuff and I handled the college stuff. And so I think Ohio State was playing Texas. I can't remember who it was, but I used to write what was called Kingston Game. So I would take a game and I would break it down, briefings, and I would make it really kind of football heavy. And then I'd make a prediction at the end. And I was like, you know what? I've been emailing these things to Pete Hutag for 18 freaking months. I was like, in my mind, I was like, you can take it or leave it, but I'm sending him one last one because this will. And so my email was basically, look, this is what I can really do. And I sent it to him. 10 minutes. After 18 months, 10 minutes later, who do you do this for? I'd like to talk to you. And I was like, about damn time. It's so at that point, I started doing a little bit more. And so for about a 3 or 4 year span, I was one of the writers for College Football News. Matt Zemek, Richard Simonello, Pete Hutag, and me. A few years later, Barrett Salu got on. And so he's taken that and we had a tremendous media career. And so I was able to write. And I think that's the other thing, is that the ability to write. And I know there are people, there's a radio host I know, he writes his entire show. He writes it. And at first I was kind of like, I didn't like that because I like being kind of off the cuff and just whatever happens. I think the organic HR radio show is more that way. But then I realized I should be writing some because I'm seeing kind of how he's doing it. but you put the writing and the radio together. Oh, hey, there's something. And so that was also there when Mark called me, like, hey, you can write for our website, you can do radio, then you can do the sidelines. And so I kind of ticked all the boxes. Mark was just worried about how I kind of get along with people, and they realized, hey, John is a really hard worker and he's a good dude. What was I even worried about? And so from that point forward, Mark and I have, worked very, very closely together on all Texans radio stuff. Through the pandemic, through everything, through the lows of the 2020, 2021 or 2022 seasons. And now hopefully we're on the upswing. And, I just waited for that day that I could hear in my ears him call us, going to a Super Bowl or winning a Super Bowl. And, that's kind of just the next step, which will be really, really cool in my career. But I just tell people, look, you have podcasts you can do, you can Zoom, and people like to talk about themselves. Let's be honest. I mean, who doesn't? I like to talk about myself. I like to tell my story. I like for people to hear my story because I think it's pretty unique. But I also like to listen and hear what other people's stories are. You can talk to your computer. You can do a YouTube video. It may not click in year 1. It may not click in year 3. But if you stay after it and you really enjoy it, I really enjoy this, you're going to have to do a lot of free stuff. But eventually, things start to click, and you never know where that's going to take you. Now, for me, I did have an advantage that I played college football, that I did coach when I was high school. So I had I brought something a little different to the party. I wasn't going to be one of the shouty show guys that can just argue and do great, like Nick Wright. Nick Wright is one of the best shouty show argument guys I've ever met in my life, and he's brilliant. That's not me. I've got my niche, which is I know the game. I know it inside and out. But the things that we have to do to kind of get to where we want to go, I think a lot of people see McAfee, and they're like, well, I could do that. I could do that. I mean, okay, do that. How long does it? Do that for 225 days out of the year, back to back. Because I remember when I did my first radio show on air in Houston and got all geared up, did all 4 hours. Oh, man, that was awesome. I got to do that tomorrow on a Tuesday. Like, again, the hell am I talking about on a Tuesday? For another 4 hours in the afternoon, And so, as easy as it sounds, it's like it takes a little bit to kind of do all those different things. But there's so many different things that people can do now that we couldn't do 20 years ago, that it makes it harder because there's so many more people in the space. And so you kind of got to, elbow your way through and kind of find what your niche is. But once you find it, if you love it, keep doing it, because it'll eventually pay off. Because if a slappy like me can do it, then there's no question that there are people out there that are going to be more talented, better at the mic, maybe understand a particular game or sport more so than I do, and they'll have their opportunity somewhere. And you just never know what that's going to turn into.
And that's exactly why I started the podcast, for things like that and words like that to keep me going, because, you're one day closer to a yes. So thank you, Johnny.
Yes, right. Absolutely.
Shifting gears, year 25 of Texans football, year 12 for you. What are we looking like? I know how the season ended a little bitter. Tough way to go out, especially for how you guys looked at the end of the season. It was a good season, I think you'd say, overall. How did you guys feel to end the last year, and how do you feel going into this year? A lot of good things coming. You got Will Anderson extended. You got Tank Dell coming back, hopefully, to the old Tank Dell that we all know him. And then CJ Stroud has a big year himself to prove.
Yeah, the ending of last year is such a bitter pill to swallow. I think for a number of reasons. Obviously, starting with the CJ piece. CJ, people are talking about, he had his downturn in 2025. I think actually CJ really grew as a quarterback in 2025. And then those 2 playoff games, when the nation finally got to see him, he didn't play his best. We struggled. People could see how good the defense was, how many times the defense made a play. Gosh, if CJ just played average quarterback, they would have moved on, etc. And I think that's the hard part, because I'm telling you, we flew to New England as confident as we could possibly have been. We had beaten New England the year before. In 2024, housed them. I know Drake May is a rookie, but I get all that. They're a different team, but we had never beaten them in the playoffs at Gillette. We had had such grueling losses to them at Gillette. We'd finally broken through 2024 to beat them in a regular season game. We were confident. Defense was playing extremely well. Scored a couple times against the Steelers. It's going to be cold. So what? Don't care. We're good to go. We're not going to have Nico. It doesn't seem like, but that's okay. We're better than the Patriots. We got a 10-7 lead in that game. And then the pick six happened for Marcus Jones and it made it 14-10. And that's when I was, holy crap, here we go. It's the Patriots again at Gillette. I think had we lost to, I don't know, the Jets at MetLife, I don't think it would have stung as much. Okay, we played a poor ball game, whatever. If it would have been, I don't know, the Chargers and SoFi, if it would have just been any other team, but the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Patriots, I think it probably, all right, well, we just didn't play well. Okay, shake it off, away we go. But I feel like we felt like we were better than the Patriots. And once we took the 10-7 lead, I thought for sure, this is kind of the formula we're playing with. We got down early, but we fought back. Now we're up 10-7, and we got the ball, and the defense is cranked up. We don't have to go score touchdowns every time, but we can just move the ball a little bit. We'll be okay. We'll beat them. They can't beat us. The other part of the sentence is
We can't beat ourselves.
and we beat ourselves. So, and I think it's the Patriots. You know, a lot of people felt like that was the opportunity to go to AFC Championship game. You know, going out to Denver would have been difficult, but we would play Jarrett Stidham. So there was a lot of, once we got back, there was a lot of bitterness for weeks. Other losses have not stuck around like that. You know, we lost the Ravens in 23. It's like, no, but it was a good season. In 24, we lost to the Chiefs, but it's like, yeah, it's the Chiefs. You know, they went out to the Super Bowl. Yeah, okay. But the Patriots, I mean, it's the Patriots, but also because we played offensively, especially that first half, so poorly, I think it just left such a bad taste. It was like, Daniil forced a fumble, Will forced a fumble, we picked him off. We did all these things we had to do defensively. But then we gave up the pick six. And it was just from that standpoint so frustrating to know that the guy that was playing quarterback that day was not the guy that we saw during the 2025 season. When the defense is playing that well, man, you just got to be able to just this. But CJ had a lot going against him that game. Dalton Schultz went out early in the first quarter. Nico didn't play. Trent Brown didn't play. And we had not lost with Trent Brown at right tackle. Joe Mixon was
MIA.
didn't play all year. Woody was banged up in that game. We ran for 17 yards all day. He had no play action to speak of. And then it snowed, and rain, snow, where kind of a mix. And CJ, it's one of his kryptonites. He's not a guy that he just doesn't handle precipitation well. Which playing in Houston is great. Playing in Indianapolis, great. We're inside, but he just threw some balls I think he'd like to have back. And so it's a question, I've been asked all offseason. It's a question everybody in Houston's asking. Everybody in Houston reads all these quarterback ranking lists. PFF with one, and I don't think anybody has gotten it right about him, honestly. But then again, the people like Mark and myself who had seen every throw he practiced, had seen every throw in a game, felt like he wouldn't have one of those games. Like he was not high, was not possible. He's too good of a thrower of the football to ever have one of these games. And then he did. And this came at the worst time. And so there is a discerning eye. I know on a lot of, I'll tell you a quick story. We have a store here called HEB. It's a big grocery store in Texas. And it's the one a lot of Texans take a lot of pride in HEB, and we love it. So I'm at HEB, and every now and again, I've gone to a different one since I've moved. And so I was in this one. I didn't think anybody would recognize me or anything, but it's happened. And so guy's walking by, I'm going to the yogurt, and the guy, literally, I hear his cart like screech. And I'm kind of, go. And And he looks at me and goes, I give CJ Stroud 4 games. That's it. If it get done in 4 games, I'm going to Davis Mills. The guy took off with his cart. It's like, okay. So a second story, I'm in Vegas. It's so funny because I never thought, I went out to Vegas for a Super Bowl a long time ago for my radio station. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I never thought my family would like it, but my wife and I went out there for Big 12 meeting days 2 years ago. Really loved it. We were at the Bellagio. We ate well, and it was just too choice. So we decided we'd kind of team up a trip out to L.A. with a trip to Las Vegas for a couple days, come back, and then drive from L.A. to Houston with my wife's stuff in a van, all that. So anyways, so I sit down and play blackjack. It's one of my favorite things to do. Sit down and play blackjack in between these two guys. The guy to my right leans over, and as he leans over to put some chips out, I see the back of his hat says Houston Texans. Well, I've got my Houston Texans hat on, and I just looked at him and said, nice hat, bro. And that's all I said. And all of a sudden, he looked at me and kind of went back, and he looked back and saw my hat, and I reached over and I said, I'm John Harris. I'm a sideline reporter for the Texans. But all of a sudden, his eyes got really big, and then he realized who I was. And he heard my voice. He wasn't sure of my name, but he heard my voice, and he recognized it, the whole thing. So he's telling his mother-in-law, he's telling his wife, who I was and all this. And as soon as he says all that, he turns to me, he goes, come on, man, tell me CJ's going to play better than us. I'm like, I can't go anywhere without somebody asking, hey, is CJ going to play better? And I want to say yes, but I believe that he will. I believe the last couple of years in particular have kind of shown them the path. And that is, you got to give CJ some help. You can't allow him to go out there with one hand tied behind his back. And when he started with a run game and a playoff game, that produces 17 yards. And you don't have Nico Collins. And then you lose Dalton Schultz, your top 2 targets. You're not going to be able to live like that way. When you've got a moved offensive line around because Trent Brown, who you relied on, is injured and can't play, you got to give him protection. And so all these things that people can see, but they don't want to acknowledge as reasons why CJ has struggled. They look at, they're making excuses, Look, 2 top targets out, run game nowhere to be found. Joe Mixon didn't play all year long. Offensive line all moved around because of an injury or injuries. I want to say you give him a break, but you've got to at least consider that part of the calculus of how you evaluate CJ. So this year we get Dave Montgomery at running back. You then bring in Braden Smith from the Colts. You bring in Wyatt Teller from the Browns. You drop Keelan Rutledge. You re-sign Trent. You bring back Ed Ingram, who played right guard at a really high level in 2025. I didn't think we were going to bring him back. I thought he kind of placed himself out the way he's playing. So you've been able to change me up with the line. You've got 2 receivers that are going second year, Jaden Havens and Jalen Noel, and you think, man, they take steps up. You mentioned Tank Dell. He's kind of a big X factor because no one's really sure yet. That injury is catastrophic. Oh, no. We don't know what Tank's going to be able to bring. If he brings anything, that gets CJ going because Tank always gets CJ going.
Mm-hmm.
And the fans love Tank. Love him. Tank walks down the street and it goes viral. I mean, he's that beloved. So if you can add all those things to CJ, a better offensive line, and a run game well beyond what it was, all of his weapons healthy and ready to go, then I think you give CJ a fair chance at being successful. And I think in his second year in this offense, I think you're going to see a much different CJ Stroud. Again, but as I said in every interview, I'm going to back CJ. I think that with all those things considered and taken into account, it makes sense why maybe there were some struggles over the last couple of years. I mean, hell, he sacked 52 times in 2024. But again, I was close with proofs in the pudding. And even what he does in the regular season, I think people are going to be, well, let's see it in the playoffs. Let's see it in the playoffs. But I think he can establish the foundation in the regular season. And they can find their identity offensively. And then go into the playoffs feeling like I'm not just punching the air. I'm not one hand tied behind my back. There's actually some substance to what we do. Our run game, our pass game, balance. play action works off the run game. The run game, because we can throw it so well, that opens things up for Dave Montgomery, William Marks. And then you got to, again, with a lot of things, you got to have some luck. You got to have some injury luck. Last year, the offense didn't have that injury luck. And so hopefully they can have that this year. And in defense, they had a lot of injury luck last year, and hopefully that can stick too. As we stay healthy, relatively speaking, for this year, I think we're going to be a really tough out for a lot of teams, no matter what.
Is there a rookie that you're excited about specifically? I know you guys got a wide range. Indiana guy in round 7 and Aiden Fisher, but Cade McDonald fallen to round 2. That you guys 33rd pick you guys got him at as a
I think it being we were at 38. I think we went to 34.
Okay.
I think that's where we ended up. And the guy for me is funny. Lucas is on. So draft is on Thursday. So I have my guys in Sports Radio 610 in the morning. Sean Pendergrass with Notre Dame, and it's Seth Payne, who played for the Texans. They had me on to talk about the draft one final time. And so Seth just asked, was like second question they asked me, and he started kind of ripping through all the different centers. We didn't talk about the center for a long time. And we thought that was the one starting spot that might be open. And Seth said, hey, of the centers, which one would you like? Which one would you want? And I immediately said, Keelan Rutledge. And it kind of caught both of them off guard. And they were kind of like, okay. And then I explained, when I was at the Senior Bowl, they had Keelan cross-training to play center. And it literally is one of those things where I'm driving. I got a longer drive, long commute, no longer your new commute. And I'm just thinking about things. And one day, Lucas just hit me. I was like, the Senior Bowl, they had Rutledge playing center. I wonder if that's what we're thinking. That would be smart. And so that's just my brain working. And so I get on the air with them, Keelan Rutledge. So we go to Thursday night of the draft. After I kind of explain everything, we go to Thursday night of the draft. Texans trade up. And we're like, oh, who's this for? We're thinking, who's it for? Who could it be? And Roger Dell says, Keelan Rutledge, Georgia Tech. And I just, look, I told you this. I said this on air yesterday. And so that next morning, of course, Sean Sepper played what I had to say. But it is a guy that hasn't played center in college. Who played it at the Senior Bowl. Can he transition over to center? I hope so. But more importantly, he's got the demeanor that this team is looking for. We have a thing here in Houston. D'Amico brought it: special work ethic and relentless mindset, called Swarm. And everybody talks about it. Hey, the defense is swarmy. They're swarm. That is the defense. You look at them and they embody that. Then the offense say, well, hey, why isn't the offense swarming like the defense is? Well, you got to go get the right personnel, the right people. And I think this offseason was spent doing that. We got to find guys that have the same special work ethic and relentless mindset like the defense has. And people have said it throughout the league. Like, man, offense ever matches the defense, oh my God, they're going to win the Super Bowl. And that's kind of the hope, is that we found those guys, that we found them offensively. But Keelan Rutledge was the guy that, to me, I felt like they had to have. A guy that changed the culture in the room. And then you add him to Wyatt Teller. You add him to Braden Smith, Trent Brown, guys that have been around, seen some things, some really good leaders. You throw in Ariante Ursary, who I just loved to death. For me, he's one of the best young men I've ever met. I just love him. And now you got the makings of something on the offensive line. But you had to change your culture and the mindset. And it took a couple of years to be able to do that. I think they've done that. And in 2-3 years, I hope we're talking about Keelan Rutledge as what he could be. And that is one of the best centers in the league. He's got to learn how to play center. That's a big part of this. And hopefully he'll do that. He is the rookie I'm probably most excited about.
So when you look at your division, Titans have year 2 of an improved offensive line, Cam Ward year 2. Daniel Jones is theoretically back. Obviously the Colts, they squandered towards the end of the year badly. And then you have the Jags, who also still have to play up with Liam Cohen, year 2 of Liam Cohen with Trevor Lawrence. Who do you fear the most? I know you guys are still the team to beat, but who do you look at in the AFC South as a team that you need to watch out for next year?
I think the one thing that worries Texans fans probably more than any other, and you could say this about Tennessee with Cam Ward and Brian Dable, but not yet. But the iteration of Trevor Lawrence that we saw the last half of last year with Liam Cohen, if that continues, that's problematic. We thought that after 2022, when Trevor had that second half of the year where Jacksonville got hot, Tennessee tanked, and Jacksonville beat Tennessee on a Saturday night to win the AFC South in 2022. We all came back in 2023 like, oh man, Doug Peterson and Trevor Lawrence to
Watch out.
Oh, look out. And we went there in week 3 in D'Amico's first year. You're 0-2. And they had just played the Chiefs and played close. And so they were going to London after our game. And so they didn't even look at us. And we put it on. I mean, we just put it all over them. And then they struggled the rest of that particular year. To a point where at the end of the year, when they had to win a game at Tennessee to win a division, they lost. We beat the Colts the night before. We ended up winning a division. They're bounced out of the playoffs.
By Doug.
So we've said this before about Trevor Lawrence. Like, if Trevor and Doug Peterson, if Trevor and Liam Cohen. So there is, and there's a section of Texans fans that are like, yeah, but it didn't happen with Peterson. Why is it going to happen with Cohen? I think it's not as if Liam's a better coach than Doug, but I feel like Liam is a little bit different in his approach, and maybe Trevor's more mature. Who knows? But that's what I think everybody in the AFC South. The AFC South to me fears two things. One, if Trevor and Liam Cohen get together and it's magical music for the next few years. The other one is if CJ Stroud gets back to rookie CJ Stroud, nobody's beating the Texans. I don't even care what Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence do. We got a shot against the Texans if CJ's not playing great. But if CJ gets to rookie CJ Stroud, forget it. We're playing for a wild card. Those are the two things I think AFC South fans fear. I think Daniel Jones can do some good things, but I don't know that roster completely is one that I'm fearful of. Now, they have pieces. No doubt, they have pieces. But where they have holes, they're pretty glaring holes. And JT goes down for a little bit. I'm a huge fan of Jonathan Taylor. I'm scared of him every time he's on the field. If he doesn't play in a game,
it's a different offense. It's a very different offense without JT.
I don't fear them at all if he doesn't play. If he plays, I'm like, but if he doesn't play, I don't worry about them. I think Tennessee is a lot like us in 2023, but I hope that they're still a year away, or at least a year away. But Tennessee is going to be a lot better. I like Robert Saleh, the coach. Obviously, he and D'Amico worked together for a while. I like Robert Saleh, just his vibe and the way he goes about things. I like his excitement, though. I think he's going to be a hit in Tennessee. Avid Shanley just has a stat his way and let him work with Mike Bonganzi. I think the Titans will get it turned around in due time. The Colts are the one that I go, they're in the precipice of, and this is what makes it interesting. Obviously, a bad year, and Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard, who I love. Chris and I know each other for 30-plus years. And they'll lose your jobs. I mean, it's that simple. This has got to be a season that produces more than just 8 wins, 9 wins, even 10 wins. But if they don't go to the playoffs, all bets are off. And that could reset the whole thing. That could send Daniel Jones packing some of their older veterans. They may have to restart that whole thing with a new GM head coach. So this, to me, I think the Colts play desperate this year. And I don't know if that's the way they want to play. Well, they were kind of free-flowing and just going with the flow early in the 2025 season. They were tough to beat. I mean, their offense was incredible. They did face some tougher opponents later. But to me, in the AFC South, if Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence make sweet leads, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for anybody to beat them at that point. I mean, I'll take my shot with my team because I think if CJ Stroud plays well, then we got as good a shot of going to the Super Bowl as anybody will AFC. But we got to go to London to play Jacksonville. That's not going to be easy. Jacksonville is going to be tough. And But I love our games against them. Our games against them have been fun. Even when we've lost, they've been fun games. The one last year in Jacksonville,
That ending was incredible.
I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, the 2 games. I mean, we played them in Jacksonville. We're driving. It's 10-10, and we're gonna go. We get Nico catches the ball for a first down, and he's breaking a tackle, and he's about to go upfield, and he's gonna slide into the red zone. We can basically kill the clock and keep Lane with a field goal, and Nico fumbles for the first time in his career. They take the ball, go down, they score, make it 17-10. We get a drive. We're going to go tie the game, and CJ has Christian Kirk wide open in the end zone. And right as he throws it, Josh Hines Allen just tips the ball in the end. It flutters. They pick it off. Ball game, we lose. Then we go down 29-10 in Houston where we play them. They're kicking our you-know-what. And that is going to make us 3-6. And we're dead.
That's what Davis Mills too, right? Yeah.
Davis Mills brought us back. Davis Mills brought us back. It's one of the most incredible games I can remember ever seeing. Houston fans can be fickle, and a lot of our fans had taken off to listen to me, Andre, and Mark on the way home. And boy, they heard a classic. They had some FOMO for sure after that. So, yeah, our games against Jacksonville the last 3 years they've been unbelievable.
I remember that game specifically because, I had to keep my Texans loyalty in some way, and I had the Texans defense as my fantasy team. And that game, that intercept or the fumble recovery for the touchdown, I think ended up making me win by like 5 points. So shout out the ending of that game. No, what NFL team outside the AFC South should fans know or be aware of this year that you think are getting slept on a little bit?
What good question. I think, like I said, I think Tennessee's probably a year away. It's so hard because everybody talks about this team, that team. I think one team that will turn the corner sooner than later, but maybe not right away. And it all comes back to the quarterback because I do think the pieces are there, especially defensively, and that's the Giants. I think John Harbaugh makes them a much better team, a much better coached team. But it comes down to Jackson Dart. And I say this about Jackson all the time. This was probably 4 or 5 years ago. I think it was his first year at Ole Miss, if I remember correctly. They came and played in the Texas Bowl. And so I called the game for us, 4-6-10. And then I went down at the end of it to the media workrooms. I wanted to hear press conferences and such. And so I was sitting in a chair in the back like I always do. And Jackson walked in. And, he wears the eye black and everything. And Lucas, he had eye black all over the place. He was kind of stumbling in. And I said, Jackson, I waved him over. I pointed at my seat. Right, bro. He just looked like hell. And it hit me at that point. It was like, this guy will never play in the NFL looking like that because he plays YOLO ball. He's the YOLO quarterback. He's like, you only live once, so let me try and run to this linebacker. And, he's flipped over. The interesting thing was that Ole Miss learned how to kind of
pick and choose.
But then he got to the league, and it was like he went right back to it.
Mm-hmm.
It was like he's trying to run over Patriots linebackers. He's trying to run these guys over. It's like, you can't be the YOLO quarterback, man. You got to understand it. You are hugely important to your team. And I think he's got definite quarterback skills. But that defense, even without Dexter Lawrence, I think that defense, boy. Adding Arvell Reese, I think is going to be so. They're gonna have some tough goings on early until Dart kind of figures it out. But once he does, I think the Giants could end up being a tough battle. And they have some losses all over the place. I mean, you don't have any idea what the Commanders have. The Cowboys' defense is awful, but I think they'll be improved. And then the Eagles, 1 year they go Super Bowl win, the next year they look like they don't even care about playing football. So it's like, so the Giants are in a spot where Harbaugh just gets his program instituted the way he wants, has another draft, another free agent signing period. I think he could end up getting that thing going in the right direction. And I think this year kind of starts it. I don't expect them. I mean, win 7 games, I think it'll be a good season. 7-10, 8-9 even. But there's an opportunity there in the NFC East to do it. And they play us in the AFC South. And look, it's a good division, but it's not great. So the Giants have an opportunity to win some games and do some good things, but it's Jackson Dart that can't, play YOLO football. Quarterbacks in the league have figured that out. Like, hey man, I can't take it. I gotta just go out of bounds. And guess what? You run out of bounds, it's okay. Live to see the next play. You don't have to, end up on somebody's, NFL's greatest hits highlight reel because you tried to run a linebacker over. You didn't go out of bounds, and you should have. And that happened way too much to him as a rookie. So I think they feel like they got the right guy, but he's just got to kind of change the style a little bit. And if he does that, I think the Giants can be a tough out for some teams.
Now, like you said, you're the college football guru when it comes to the draft. We've talked about that in the past in prior conversations as well. I know you're already looking at least a little bit into 2027.
Yeah.
Who's a name that nobody's talking about that you think flies up the board in the first round?
Well, it's funny because I thought it was going to be our guy, Charlie Becker. But I feel like more people are, they were, more draft people. And it's funny because a lot of draft people don't even really, get into it until January.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in this thing, right now. I haven't done as much this summer as I would like. But I was like, Charlie Becker. People are going to forget about Charlie Becker because it was Omar Cooper. And then there was Elijah Surratt. They're going to forget about Charlie Becker is in a really good wide receiver class. He is absolutely going to surprise a lot of people with what he can do, his speed, his downfield ability. But he blocks.
That's the blocking.
I was studying the Ohio State Indiana game. And there's so many players in that. Caden, obviously, Cade McDonald, who ended up being a Texan. We were the linebackers for Ohio State. Watching watch Genie, wide receivers, with the running backs. I couldn't understand why Keon Black did not go to the combine. It was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. But anyhow, I'm watching Charlie Becker do things that a lot of teams ask tight ends to be. Like in the run game and blocking, like going in motion, inserting himself into the B gap and blocking a linebacker. I'm like, oh God, the fastest guy in the field, they're asking to do this? So there's a all-round, well-rounded game for Charlie Becker. I think is going to make a lot of NFL teams really, really happy. So if I just, I'm looking at I'll give you a guy each kind of position as through. At quarterback, I've been a big Lenore Sellers fan at South Carolina. Got to play much better than he did last year. But I love Lenore Sellers. He's the size of Andrew Luck, kind of plays like Andrew Luck. Throws the ball like Andrew Luck. And he's my comp as Andrew Luck. But there's got to be a little bit more polish to his game. At running back, I love Kewan Lacey from out of Ole Miss. Dude can absolutely block. He's a guy that if it's not him, hopefully Ahmad Hardy can come back from being shot this summer because Ahmad Hardy is my number one running back. But Kewan Lacey is an absolute dude. Charlie Becker, wide receiver, huge fan. I mentioned that the Texas Bowl, I've had the opportunity to call that game 2 years ago. It was Baylor LSU, and LSU had this freshman tight end named Trey Green. And he went up and mossed somebody in the end zone for a touchdown. And I literally looked at and I almost sat on air. I look at my co-host or my play guy, and I went, what was that? 6'7", basketball skills. Trey Green out of LSU, absolute stud. Jamari Johnson out of Oregon is going to be one too. My favorite lineman, whether it's tackle, interiors, Trevor Gooseby from out of Texas. Had he come out this year, you would have taken me for any offensive lineman was taken in this draft.
Wow,
he's that freaking good. If defensive line, I like the two guys from Oregon, Amari Washington, Bear Alexander, two very, very good players. Dylan Stewart and Colin Simmons on an edge. Simmons is the guy I've watched for a while from high school from Duncanville, Texas. But Stewart is, my God, he can absolutely fly. Linebacker, I like the Notre Dame guys, if I'm being honest. But the guy that I think is off the radar screen is Ben Roberts from out of Texas Tech. Had a great Big 12 championship game last year. Kind of played with Jacob Rodriguez, but was overshadowed. I think Ben Roberts will show it off. At corner, the best one in the business. He might be number one on my Harris 100 when I put it out, and that's Leonard Moore from on Notre Dame. Absolute free show at corner. This my God, I love watching him play. He is just he's tremendous. At safety, the guy that transferred from Minnesota to Oregon, kind of like
Dylan Thielman, yeah.
Dylan from
Purdue.
Purdue, Oregon.
Yep.
Coy Parrish, I think he is one of the better all-round safeties. But just at Minnesota, it wasn't, they get the bowl game, but just didn't really get the shine. I think he goes out to Oregon and he shows it off. So that's a player pretty much at every position that I'm, kind of near the top of the list of guys that I really like to kick it off. But I'm sure there's probably some that I like Carter Smith, Indiana, as a tackle. I think he might go into center at some point. And we've seen that a few times with guys that are going from tackle. Graham Barton, who starts for the Buccaneers, is a lot like Carter Smith. A little bit shorter arm, but really good, really technique sound, which you knew because of the short arms, it probably was going to go in the center. And that might happen to Carter Smith, but I really like him in Indiana. I think Indiana's got one hell of a squad. It's going to be awesome to watch them play with Josh Hoover this year. And as long as he keeps the mistakes to a minimum, I think the Hoosiers will be obviously right there. But repeating, man, that's tough. But they got weapons, they've got linemen, and they got Signetti. And that's worth a touchdown almost every game alone, just having that guy on the sideline.
Listen, I got to give a shout-out, two-time appearance on this show, my boy Quinn Warren, the punter. I know we're not a big special teams guy, but watch out for him, 48 yards last year. But, no, it's good. I think it'll be interesting to see what they do. Like you said, it's kind of hard to see what Hoover does just based off what Fernando did last year. But if Hoover can be close, you got Sig and you got a defense that is arguably better than last year with a wide receiver corps, also with Nick Marsh. So it'll be interesting what will happen with them. So good stuff. Last thing I had for you, as we kind of embarked on this conversation, you kind of hitched on a lot of people in general, but, what this podcast falls back on are the supporting cast and your career. Who's been a lot of people that have impacted you in your career to help you get to this point, whether it was before the Texans or during the Texans? I know Mark, obviously, being a big part of that, but who else?
Yeah, Mark was a massive part of that. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say my wife. It's hard to be a football wife, whether you're coaching, or playing or involved in it. The coaching takes so much out of you, but being in the building, I feel just as much a part of it. My wife has been so supportive. Hey, wait a second, we're moving from North Carolina, so we do this radio thing at a radio station that doesn't even exist right now. Okay, I believe in you. She did it, and it wasn't always a bed of roses, and it still isn't always a bed of roses, but she has supported me. I remember that first game I did up in the booth for our preseason TV. I remember getting a text in the first break, and she's like, "Audie, you sound amazing. Keep it going. Love you." And that was it. And I was just like, okay, let's, without her, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know, if I'd been with somebody that was just, no, you want the Brown, you need to go in investment banking, you need to do something, you got to someone near you, you need to be someone near. But my wife, and probably the reason that we clicked was she's extremely independent in the way that she thought. She's an artist. She thinks differently. She looked at life differently. And I always appreciated that. And so when challenges came up for different things, she was the one person that I always knew I can confide in. She knew she can confide in me, but she always supported me to keep chasing, keep going. As a few years ago, we were going through COVID. We were my daughter wanted to go out to LA and kind of start the her actress thing that she's doing, and she's doing great with that. And so things were changing with my wife's job, and so we weren't making a lot of money. And so I was just like, babe, maybe I need to do this, maybe I need to do that. And she looked at me, she said, no. I don't care if we're broke, I don't care if we're destitute. You got to keep going with this because you're really, really good at this, and we never know where this is going to go. And I'm talking not a year later, Mark came to me and said, hey, you great job on the sidelines, but I want you to go up in the booth for TV for preseason. And he really kind of gave me more of the higher profile, because, you know, a lot of Texas fans are at home watching those games. They're seeing me, hearing me talk about this team. And so we really got to raise my profile. And it was like, I was like, I got to make money. We got to get the money. You got to do this. We got to be able to live, et cetera. So we'll make it through, but we can't make it through if you're doing something like accounting again, or whatever the case might be. And she's been so supportive, you know, through all of that. You know, my kids the same way. They've always been, Dad, keep going, keep doing it. And I think, you know, my daughter kind of learned from that. You know, when things get tough in the actress world, you know, there's not good auditions, or there's a lot of auditions, there's a lot of no's. She kind of looked at what I, you know, had gone through to kind of get where I was, and she's like, you know, I can do it, I can do it. So, yeah, I would say my wife for sure. My kids have just been incredible from that standpoint. I mentioned her earlier, Gail Reagan. She was headmaster, assistant headmaster, then she became the headmaster. And unfortunately, 2012, after I'd been away for a few years, she actually was shot and killed at school.
Oh, wow.
And she was the light of my life, because she gave me the opportunity to come to Episcopal in 1994, a long time ago, and be in the same hiring class as Paige Williams, who turned into Paige Harris. And so I always thanked her for that, because I remember her telling me years later, she goes, you know, I almost didn't call you. And I said, well, what made you call me? And she said, when you put in your cover letter that your parents were teachers, she said, that's when I knew I had to give you a shot. And I was like, good to know. And so, you know, they're writing, kind of putting Paige and I together at Episcopal, and just being a really great leader for us at that point. And then my parents, you know, my parents were always supportive. I remember when I was in high school, and I was trying to decide what I wanted to do, where I wanted to go. And I remember my mom saying, go anywhere. It doesn't just go anywhere. We know you're going to pick a good school. Just go. We're staying out of this. We will stay out of this. You go and you decide. And it was just that freedom that they allowed me to pick Brown. And I knew I was going to go to a good school, but they allowed me to pick Brown. It was going to be, you know, 2,500 miles away. I wasn't going to be able to come home much. You know, Mom was going to, you know, help pay for tuition by doing extra touring throughout the 4 years I was at Brown, but they did it. And it's just kind of amazing that they were able to do it. I mean, they were both teachers. I should probably never have gone to Brown, but, you know, they found a way to make it work for 4 years. You know, I got a tremendous degree. They kind of poke at me a little bit that it was a civil engineering degree, but, you know, they were hugely supportive. You know, my dad coached me early on, and, you know, when you're younger, you don't really understand, you know, your dad being a coach. It's not an easy thing at all. And I kind of bristled against that, to a degree, and probably more than that. But he was, you know, now that I've gotten older, it was like, he was right. It was right. Damn it. It was right. Yeah, he was right about that too. And my son is finding that out now. My son will say to me, you know, Dad, I didn't really think you're right. You're right about that. You're right about that. I was like, you know, parents, we're not always 100% right, but we've lived through the wars. We can at least tell you what happened to us. And, you know, one day you'll have that situation, Lucas, and it's like, yeah. And now you get to that stage, you get to that age where you're like me, I'm 54. I'm never going to be wrong again, I can tell you that. But yeah, through my parents, Dale Reagan, my wife, my kids, Mark was just incredible in what he was able to do. And you know, it's worked out probably better than Mark even thought at the time. I don't think in his heart of hearts he thought that it would turn out the way that it has, but I think he felt like, yeah, you know, if we could squeeze, you know, a little bit of Johnny, Bill O'Brien, okay, like stuck with me every year, and now I don't know that I could be radio with anybody else, and I think we are the second longest running Houston radio crew. I think that's right, because there's John and Lance, who I mentioned earlier, who are good friends of both me and Mark, and Lance I grew up with. They've been together since 1997. And then there's me and Mark. And Mark and I have been together since 2014. So we take a lot of pride in that we continue to do great shows. In fact, there's probably one playing right now on Sports Radio 610 that we just did. So yeah, there's so many that, you know, I haven't named. You know, D'Amico Ryans has been just incredible. I'll tell you one quick story, Lucas, then we got to go. I'll tell you a quick story about D'Amico Ryans and what he just. We were in Pittsburgh in 2024 and played preseason game. It was going to be my first on TV. So we had gone to Ohio for 9 days, I think. And so then we bust over to Pittsburgh. And so we all bust over and we got to hustle up to the production meter. But I know that of the 6 buses that had bust over, I know D'Amico's on bus 1 and we're on bus 5 or 6, but we're all going to go to this together. And so we go in, we do the production meeting. I don't know if D'Amico knew that I was going to be on TV, but he knew I was in that production meeting because obviously I asked some questions and, you know, different things. And so it was great. No big deal. So we do the game, but as soon as the game's over with TV, we're done. It's like, done. But when our games are over, I go get an interview with D'Amico downstairs and a player, etc. And so I didn't know whether I can make it down or not. So I told our guys, hey, forget the player interview, but I still want to in coach afterwards. And they said, yeah, no problem. So game's over. I had a good call for my first team game up at the booth. I run down. I get down there. He's in his presser. And he comes out of his presser. And as soon as he comes out of the presser, I started. I don't want to waste his time. We do the interview. And we get done with the interview. And every other coach I've done an interview with, albeit, you know, we'll do a great interview, might say a word to you, whatever. We get done with the interview, he turns back and he looks in this big smile on his face. He goes, hey man, how was it in the booth? Did you have fun? I was speechless. I was like, no coach had ever said that. No coach had ever done that. Nobody had ever asked. And I just said, yeah, coach, it went great. I said, I gave you a lot of praise or something like that. And he goes, that's good. All right, I'll see you on the plane. And I was like, the fact that he even remembered that I was calling the game on TV and then asked, I mean, interested asked, like, how did it go? I mean, I was like, it was just, there have been some moments with coaches that, I mean, I'd like to have back it. Maybe not my fault, more the coach kind of firing back at me for something. But I'd never had a coach, hey, how you doing? Basically, never. Right after the game, right after his press conference, he's done it for me in a different way. Like my parents, my wife, you know, they've been, you know, significantly involved in things. But D'Amico has made me and others want to be in that building, and Nick Casario the same thing. Those two have made me want to be in that building for however long they're in that building, because I believe in what they're doing. I believe in how they treat people. I believe in how they built it, and I want to be there for that. There was a time, probably 4 or 5 years ago, I was like, "Where's this going? What are we doing?" I mean, you know, my daughter's in LA. You know, I'm not making a lot of money. My wife's, you know, job is kind of then, you know, really sticky and absent. Am I in the right place? Am I doing the right thing? We're getting our butt kicked. The environment's not great. And then Nick got in the building, and then D'Amico got in the building. And I was like, I don't want to leave. I want to be there. I don't want to be anywhere but there at that point. So I got to say those two guys have also been part of it as well.
John, not only for you, for Mark, for D'Amico, for Nick, for the McNair family, I hope year 25 is a good one. I hope we're at least in the AFC Championship, if not a Super Bowl. Thank you for sharing your journey. Thank you for sharing NFL predictions, who to look out for in the combine. We'll probably replay that episode here in about 6 months to see how hot you were for the Harris 100. But no, Johnny, I appreciate you. Appreciate our friendship. Means a lot just hearing the motivation that you're giving me, giving others that are listening. And football always makes life go on and more fun times with everyone. So thank you, and we'll have you on again at some point, and I'll see you down in Houston eventually here soon.
Yeah, man. You're welcome anytime. I can't wait to see you, man. It's been great getting to know you. And like I'm saying to people that get in this space, it may not always look pretty. You may wonder one day, like, man, what am I doing? But if you just stick at it and still believe in yourself. I mean, that sounds kind of hokey in some sense, but really, it is that. Very few people are handing this thing on a platter, and it's the ones that insistently go putting the things on the platter that eventually people are like, hey, oh, okay, I'm paying attention. So I appreciate it, man. Those words mean a lot, and friendship means a lot, man. I can't wait to see you, but enjoy the rest of the summer as we get ready for this thing called training camp.
Appreciate you, John. Have a good day.